iReady is an adaptive learning platform used in American schools. About 14 million students use it, and it's split into two parts: a diagnostic test that figures out what level you're at, and a set of lessons that are supposed to teach you based on the results. On paper, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Personalized learning, giving every teacher the data they need to meet every child where they are. But something's gone very, very wrong. iReady has a 1.1 star rating on site Jabber. 94% of those are 1 star. Curriculum Associates, the company behind iReady, has disabled comments on both of its official YouTube channels. And a student described the experience of iReady in such harrowing terms that you have to hear it for yourself. I'm an 8th grader and I have to use this godforsaken, sorry excuse of a website. The diagnostic is long, annoying, boring and uninteresting. Only the hard questions are graded, and getting 3 wrong answers makes you fail the lesson. When you fail a lesson, they make you do it all over again with absolutely no guidance at all. Now, iReady is truly just a waste of time and has become a modern form of medieval torture. Medieval torture? That's a child describing their maths homework. And he's not alone. Indeed, the damage goes deeper than frustration. Kids are crying at their desks over iReady. Parents are describing anxiety, panic, children who used to love maths and now refuse to touch it. A 7-year-old testified before a government body that iReady should be against the law. Students are being pulled out of playtime because their diagnostic scores aren't high enough. We're looking at a mental health crisis dressed up as an educational tool. Hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into EdTech tools. Thank you. Back to the video. Now, because I'm British, I never used iReady. I didn't grow up with it, I've never taught with it, and honestly, until recently, I'd never even heard of it. When I was at school, if you tried your best, that was enough. You did a worksheet, your teacher marked it, and if you got stuff wrong, they'd sit with you and explain it. Nobody was tracking your minutes. You were a person, not a metric. And the more I've researched iReady, the more I realise that's exactly what's been lost. But nowadays, we do have something similar to iReady in the UK. Indeed, what we have is Sparx Maths, which might actually be worse. We'll get to Sparx later, but just know, America does not have a monopoly on this. Oh, and Curriculum Associates just launched iReady Pro, their shiny new version for older students. Is it any better? We'll find out later. In one of my last videos, I talked about GoGuardian, the surveillance software that watches everything American students do on their school laptops, even at home, even on holidays. Now I'm looking at iReady, the platform that measures everything they are. Between GoGuardian snooping on every tab they open and iReady tracking every answer they give, these kids have no space left to just be kids. America calls itself the land of the free. From where I'm sitting, it looks more like the land of the surveilled. I was inspired by Shrink's video, iReady is the worst, which has nearly 500,000 views and absolutely nails the student experience. Indeed, the one line that really stuck with me was this.
Personally, I think these websites were created as a way to measure students not as people, but as metrics.
Seriously, go watch Shrink's video after this one. He lived it. I'm just the horrified Brit looking in from the outside. Anyway, here's some reasons why iReady needs to be banned from every classroom in America. Part 1. The broken test. Let's start with the diagnostic. The iReady Diagnostic is an adaptive test administered up to 3 times a year. It adjusts in real time. Get a question right and the next one's harder. Gets one wrong and it drops down. Sounds reasonable enough. But think about what it actually means for a child sat in front of it. You're a 2nd grader. You get a few right. Suddenly you're looking at differential geometry and you're wondering what the hell happened. And on the flip side, if you're an 8th grader having a rough day, you might just have a question asking you to add 2-digit numbers. So embarrassing, as Shrink puts it.
On the other side of that, being an 8th grader completing 2nd grader work is crazy. It almost feels spiteful, like the website is calling you dumb and slapping you in the face with the wrong answer.
The diagnostic is long too, over an hour in many cases, sometimes even up to 2. And The results? One person said, "During the diagnostic, I was on a 7th grade level in 4th grade. I don't even know how, and I was just straight up guessing 87% of the questions." Wow, a child was guessing nearly 9 out of 10 answers, and ended up getting placed nearly 3 years above their grade level because of it. The whole thing functions like a random number generator with cartoon characters. And the diagnostic is designed so that every student gets roughly half the questions wrong. That's how adaptive testing works. It keeps pushing you until you fail. iReady even shows students a video before the test.
Every student should expect to get around half the questions correct.
They're telling kids to their faces that they're going to get half of it wrong. That's not going to be good for the morale of a young child. And then schools use those tests to sort children into ability groups. So, a kid who's actually good at maths still walks out of that test feeling like they bombed it, because they were supposed to. And if you get placed in the wrong lessons, according to iReady themselves, that's on you, Vivi warns.
Some of my friends rushed and did not get lessons that were right for them.
So, iReady gives you bad results and then blames you for not trying hard enough. The child carries the responsibility. Always. The bit that really gets me is that teachers can't see the questions that their students even answered. Yes, they can't see the specific responses. They get broad summary scores, but nothing they can actually use. In a blog post called "Why iReady is Dangerous," a maths teaching specialist explained, "The most a teacher will ever know is that a child scored poorly, for example, in numbers and operations. Folks, that is a giant category and far too broad to be actionable." She also found mathematically inaccurate questions within her first 10 minutes on the platform. A middle school teacher in Massachusetts told Unheard that the software was telling me that my kids were completely ignorant. But I knew for a fact they could take apart a right angled triangle and figure out the other angles. Just think about that for a moment. A teacher, a human being who sees these children every day, knows what they can do. And the computer is overruling him. The algorithm says they're ignorant, so they're ignorant. The teacher's professional judgment doesn't matter. When I was teaching English as a foreign language abroad, the most important part of my job had nothing to do with data. It was keeping kids motivated, making them feel like they could do it. Because if a kid leaves your classroom loving your subject, you've done your job. And everything I've seen about iReady suggests the exact opposite. It's turning kids who are perfectly happy with maths into kids who can't stand it. You don't build a lifelong love of learning by making kids cry at a screen. You build instead lifelong haters. And a 2016 Johns Hopkins Institute for Education Policy brief concluded, "There is no evidence that iReady provides information that teachers can use to help students learn." They also noted that none of the studies we found were peer-reviewed or independent. That was back in 2016. It is now 2026 and remarkably little has changed. Part 2. The useless lessons. So you've sat through the diagnostics. You've been sorted into a level that may or may not reflect your actual ability. And honestly, this is where it goes from bad to bleak. iReady's lessons are delivered through animated characters with names like Yoop, Yooply, and Snarg. I wish I was making that up. If you're 13 years old and being spoken to like a toddler by a cartoon called Snarg while your teacher watches from behind a dashboard, I think you're entitled to be a bit annoyed. As a teacher described it, the characters talk to them like they are babies and they have to do a lesson, then a quiz. The lesson doesn't help at all, and a student put it even more directly. This website thinks we're all a bunch of toddlers with the way it teaches us. I mean, bake stars? Come on, man. Read a long paragraph about fishing. Okay, what was this article about? Fishing. Read a long paragraph about something else. And the cycle continues. That's it. That's the lesson. Rinse and repeat. Oh, Lucky's behind me. Hi, Lucky. Another person said, "Bro, I remember in the math lessons, if you got one wrong, it would give you a whole yap session before you could answer again." Because there's no teaching involved with iReady, just yapping. And if you fail a lesson quiz, typically by scoring below 60%, you have to redo the entire thing from scratch. A lesson that might take 30 to 45 minutes from the beginning. No feedback on what you did wrong, you just do it again, as a student explained. iReady never lets you see the answer to the question, so you never learn from your mistakes. And the lessons are way too long, and if you get 60%, you have to restart the whole lesson, which takes you 30 minutes. I keep coming back to this. The fact that you can't learn from what you got wrong because iReady won't show you the answers. The whole experience plays out like Groundhog Day, but with worse graphics. When I was at school, if I got a question wrong, my teacher would show me where I went wrong and at least try and help me understand it. That's what teachers do. That's what they're for. But iReady doesn't do that. It just makes you start again and again and again and again. As this student wrote, this website was the reason I broke my Chromebook in 6th grade. Smash that like button if you ever wanted to do the same, because honestly, I get it. Part 3, the emotional damage. I want you to sit with some of these just for a moment, because this is the part that stopped maybe seeing iReady as a bad product and start seeing it as something that's actively hurting children. A student called Kaiden wrote, "It is torture. It makes me want to die inside. Whenever I do it, I almost cry, and sometimes I do cry. It takes hours just to do one lesson." A student in Ohio described missing field day, basically their school's fun day, because their diagnostic score wasn't high enough, in their words. There are so many bad things about this site. Today is field day, and since I didn't get a high enough score, I can't go outside to have fun and chill with the guys. I have to retake this. This has ruined my whole school year. Honestly, I'm not sure if that one's iReady's fault or the teacher's fault. Either way, the whole situation is just awful. 7-year-old Sage Price testified before the New Jersey Board of Education. When I got a low score, I would have to go back to the computer lab until I got a higher score. I hated it. It should be against the law. A 7-year-old testifying before a government body about a maths website. Seriously, let that sink in. A 6th grader wrote, "I am in 6th grade and have had to do this for homework ever since kindergarten. It used to be fun, not anymore, and I have never learned anything in 7 years of doing it." Her whole childhood spent in front of a screen being measured. That's honestly what it comes down to for me. We're talking about children and turning them into data. We're sorting them into color-coded categories and expecting them to be grateful. And the students know it. They feel it. A private maths tutor in Alaska with 25 years of experience said, "Universally, without a doubt, every single kid hates iReady. Even my most diligent, self-taught kids loathe it." Yep, we're looking at a product that is fundamentally failing the very people it is meant to serve. Let me know in the comments. Has iReady or any other learning platform actually impacted your mental health? I want to hear your story, so let me know in that comment section below. A teacher called Gabriella wrote, "A student in my class named Lucy got a lower score on her iReady diagnostic and was really stressed about what her parents and even I would think of it. She was looking at a picture of an array of flowers when she was doing a multiplication lesson. She looked at it and entered in an answer. 10 times 7 equals 70. Basically, the problem was asking her to write the full equation for the model shown. They marked her wrong. The answer was 7 times 10 equals 70. She was so close. She cried for the rest of the day." That one moment could be the moment that Lucy decided she hates maths. And it was iReady that did that to her. Part 4. The trapped teachers. Maybe you're thinking that your teacher doesn't care, that iReady is broken, but I want to be honest with you, that's not entirely fair, because a lot of teachers do care. They care deeply, they just can't do anything about it. As this now former teacher said, "The day that the principal told us we needed to do iReady 3 times a week, that's when I was done. It was 3 hours a week for each class, when we only had 5 hours a week. So 60% of the teaching was going to be done by this computer that the kids absolutely hate. That's not what I went to college for." This teacher quit. But I guarantee you, for every teacher that actually walks out the door, there are hundreds more who have mentally checked out but can't afford to leave. They show up, they press play on iReady, and then they sit behind a dashboard watching kids do something that they know doesn't work. That's what demoralization looks like in a school. A Mr. J in West Virginia described what happened when his students' iReady minutes dropped. A district administrator came to my class and sat me down and told me that I had to do what I'm told. Teachers at my school are worried. There's absolute fear. The teacher who quit from earlier added, educators will not stick their necks out. They don't want to get fired. Teachers are terrified. And a student captured the other side. Most of my teachers hate it, but assign it so they don't get fired. That's it. That's the whole system. Teachers know it's broken. Students know it's broken. But the people making the decisions, the administrators, the district officials, the people who signed the contracts, they're not the ones sitting in the classroom watching the students cry. A maths educator of 24 years resigned in 2022, writing, if the COVID pandemic didn't take enough from our kids, this will finish them off. That's someone who survived 24 years in education, and iReady was the thing that finished them off. In fairness, and I do always want to be fair, some teachers do absolutely seem to love iReady. They love the data. They love the way it groups students by need. One teacher said, I love the way student data is broken down after the diagnostic is taken. Another said their students found a love for the program and get excited to use it. Honestly, I do believe them, but here's one thing I noticed. Every single positive review had a caveat. When used properly, in moderation. One teacher on Reddit said, we'll use it for 1 hour max per week. 2 might be pushing it a bit. Even the people who like it are basically saying, this works as long as you barely use it. At that point, it's basically a warning label. Part 5. iReady Pro. So, you'd think, after years of this, Curriculum Associates might have actually fixed things. Enter iReady Pro, the company's purpose-built platform for older students, launched for the 2025-2026 school year. They've ditched the cartoon characters, added an XP leveling system, and given students dashboards to track their own progress. CEO Kelly Sia said, middle schoolers deserve learning that feels relevant and empowering. And look, I'll give them this. Addressing the fact that teenagers don't want to be taught by a cartoon called Snarg is a step in the right direction. It even won a Tech and Learning Award. I mean, sounds promising, right? But the underlying diagnostic is still the same one that teachers have been calling unreliable for years. The data that goes in is still the same broad, unactionable data, and the company is simultaneously rebranding the diagnostic as iReady Inform and offering a shorter version, which is basically an admission that the older one took too long, even if, of course, they won't actually say it out loud. One student noticed something telling. The diagnostic used to give you a game to take a break, but in Pro, it's been replaced with useless breathing exercises. So, the company took a product that students regard as medieval torture and thought, what if we added mindfulness? So you can be mindful of how awful the test is making you feel. Meanwhile, in December 2025, parent activists filed a federal class action lawsuit in Massachusetts, accusing iReady of operating as a compulsory child surveillance system that sells highly intimate academic and psychographic profiles of children. The allegations remain unproven, and Curriculum Associates denies selling student data. But the fact we've gone from bad reviews to federal litigation should tell you something about where all of this is heading. iReady Pro is a fresh coat of paint on a building with structural problems. And the people inside the building are trying to sue the landlord. What a mess. Part 6. Sparx is worse than iReady. I said at the start that I'm British. I never used iReady. In the UK, we don't use it. When I was at school, maths homework was a CGP textbook, maybe with some dodgy clip art on the cover. No algorithm deciding what I was worth. But I'd be a hypocrite if I pretended that the UK had it sorted. Because we don't. We have Sparx Maths. And researching Sparx for this video was one of the most unsettling things I've ever done for this channel. Sparx has a 1.1 star rating on Trustpilot from over 800 reviews, with 95% giving it 1 star. The same score, in fact, as iReady. But Sparx might actually be worse. If you fail the bookwork check, a random quiz on answers you're supposed to have written down, it deletes your progress. You start again. Even iReady doesn't do that. A parent called Caroline wrote that her daughter had 278 questions for a single task. Almost 4 hours of work. And the mental health difficulties surrounding this app are real, as this student wrote. This has taken more of a toll on my mental health than any other thing I've ever experienced. iReady makes kids cry, Sparx Maths is putting them into therapy, and even worse. That petition, by the way, has over 10,000 signatures. One parent wrote, Sparx sparked a hatred of maths in my DS2. He wanted to be an accountant, now he hates it. DS2, by the way, is Mumsnet speak for second son. An English teacher on Mumsnet wrote that Sparx Maths is bad. Sparx Science is riddled with errors, conceptually shizzle. It teaches them to recite facts by rote, rather than understand the scientific principles, and has utterly impossible open questions. As an English teacher, Sparx Reader is a frickin' abomination, and parents and teachers alike seem united in the hatred of Sparx Maths. As one parent on Mumsnet wrote, DS is at a grammar school that uses Sparx. At parents' evening, even his maths teacher said it's a nightmare. And most damningly of all, a teacher on Mumsnet confessed. So I no longer have it in me to battle my child to sit still and do their maths homework. I've decided to just do it myself. Yes, I know how Sparx works and how it will give more difficult tasks if I complete it. But if it isn't completed, my child gets detention. I struggle with this. I don't think it's fair, and I actually think the whole thing is really messed up. I can't make a complaint because I'm a teacher at his school. When a teacher would rather cheat the system rather than put his own kid through it, you know that the system has failed on every level. So, to all the Americans watching this, you're not the only ones suffering. The UK is running the same experiment on kids, just with different software, but the same devastating results. And I can't do anything about it except make videos like this and hope upon hope that someone listens. Part 7. Yet nothing will change. Before I start this section, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying you don't need any way to check how students are doing. Of course you do. I mean, teachers need data. Schools need to know which kids are struggling. Assessment matters. Everyone agrees you need to assess. The question is, how? Right now, America is spending $750 million a year on iReady. Independent researchers at Teaching by Science reviewed 3 studies and found a weighted mean effect size of just 0.10, which means little to no statistically meaningful benefit. Meanwhile, teacher-led formative assessment, exit tickets, running records, a teacher actually sitting with a child and explaining when they're stuck. Well, that produces effect sizes of 0.4 to 0.7, 4 to 7 times more effective than iReady, and it costs almost nothing and it doesn't make anyone cry. Furthermore, there are simply better platforms. Khan Academy is free and has stronger evidence. Assessments is completely free and is one of the only maths interventions to earn a What Works Clearinghouse rating of positive effect without reservations. And no high-performing education system in the world, not Finland, not Singapore, not Estonia, relies on commercial adaptive software to personalize learning. Those countries invest in teachers. America invests in curriculum associates. And then they wonder why they're so low down in the educational rankings. But here's what I think will actually happen. Nothing. iReady is simply too big. Curriculum associates generates $750 million a year. They're backed by private equity. They're in 70% of the top 100 school districts, and at that scale, you're dealing with an institution. And institutions don't dismantle themselves because kids are crying. Instead, they rebrand the diagnostic, bolt on some breathing exercises because well-being, and call it progress. The company cares more about the data than it does about the people that the data is supposed to serve. And isn't that just the tragedy of the whole friggin' thing? Part 8. You are just a statistic. Shrink said something at the end of his video that I keep coming back to.
As students, we deserve to be given the opportunity to prosper and achieve success, not split into categories and given these repetitive assignments as if they genuinely help us.
He's right. And I think the reason that 500,000 people watched his video is that he said what every kid who's already sat through iReady already knew. What we're looking at stopped being education a long time ago. It looks like education from the outside, but feels like punishment from the inside. As for me, well, I never had iReady. I never even had Sparx. I had a pen and a worksheet and a teacher who could look me in the eye and tell me where I was going wrong. And that wasn't perfect. Nothing in education is. But it was human. And right now, 14 million American children and God knows how many British kids are sitting in front of screens, being watched by GoGuardian, being measured by iReady, and given no no say in any of it. America, you can't call yourself the land of the free. Not when you're treating your kids like this. Remember that teacher who left teaching over iReady? In his words, there is no teachable moment with iReady, man. It's all kids sitting in silence staring at the freaking screen. It takes the humanity out of education. It's very sad. And once the humanity is gone, what's left? Data, dashboards, diagnostic scores, and a generation of kids who learn that their self-worth is dependent on the numbers that show up on their screen. 750 million hours of childhood are disappearing into it every year, into a product that has never been independently proven to work. And I don't think we'll ever stop letting it happen, because the people who could change this aren't the ones sitting in front of the screen actually doing the tests. They never were. As this student wisely concludes, the people who made this learning site have probably never even used it themselves for more than 15 minutes. Again, I want to hear from you guys. What have your experiences been with iReady, Sparx, or any other of these learning platforms, especially the diagnostic ones? Let me know in that comment section below, and who knows, you might make it into the next Snipe Snap video. Thank you so much for watching my video. Leave a like if you made it to the end, you absolute legend. Snipe Snap out.